Good evening, folks. It's Bible story time again. The story I want to tell tonight is found in Matthew, the 18th chapter. Now, Jesus has been teaching the disciples and another group of people some stuff, and Peter comes up to Jesus and he asks him, he says, Lord, how many times should I forgive a brother who sins against me? Up to 7 times? And Jesus says, no, not 7 times, but 70 times 7. This is where our story begins. Because Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is like a king who decided to settle accounts with his servants. And as he began to settle these accounts, a man was brought before him that owed him the equivalent of about 20 years' wages. And the man couldn't pay him. So the king ordered that he and his family be sold to satisfy that debt. Well, the servant fell down on his knees before the king and he begged him. He said, have patience with me. I'll pay you all I owe. Well, the king took pity on that servant and he forgave his whole debt and let him go. Well, as that servant was leaving the king's presence, he spotted a fellow servant that owed him about 3 months' wages. He went and he grabbed this fellow servant and he choked him and he demanded his money. But his fellow servant couldn't pay him either. And he, like the servant, begged him. He says, have patience on me. I'll pay you all I owe. But he wouldn't. He went off and had the man thrown into prison until he could pay back what he owed. Well, some other servants saw what happened, and it upset them. And some of them went back to the king and told the king what had happened. Well, the king summoned this servant back to him. And the king said, you wicked servant, I forgave all your debt because you asked me to. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servant like I had on you? And in anger, the king had him thrown into prison to be tortured until he could pay back every penny. And Jesus said to Peter, and this is how my heavenly Father will treat you if you don't forgive others from your heart. And that's the end of the story. I'd like to ask some questions about this story. Now, Jesus said that the kingdom of heaven was like a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. Who do you think this king might represent? And it says, as he began to settle accounts, a servant was brought before him that owed the equivalent of about 20 years' wages, a huge debt. And he couldn't pay it. And the king ordered that he be sold along with all his family to satisfy that debt. Now, from that, what do you learn about that king? But then this servant falls down and he begs the king. He says, have patience with me. I'll pay you back what I owe. Well, the king didn't just have patience. He forgave the whole debt and turned him loose. Now, what do you learn about the king from that? And who do you suppose that servant might represent? Well, that servant who'd been forgiven this huge debt, as he's leaving, he sees somebody that owes him much, much, much less. But he demands that that guy pay him back. Well, he can't pay either. And he begs, just like the other guy did, that he have patience with him. And he says, I will pay you all of you. But he wouldn't. And he went and had that man thrown into prison until he could pay him back all that he owed him. Now, what do you learn about that servant from that? Was he truly grateful that his debt had been forgiven? Well, when the other servants saw it and got upset and went to the king and told the king what had happened, the king brings him back in. And the king, the first thing the king says is, you wicked servant, I forgave all of your debt because you asked me to. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servant like I had on you? What do you learn about the king from that? And then Jesus said to Peter, this is how my heavenly Father will treat you if you do not forgive others from your heart. Think about something. How did the king treat the servant who did not forgive the debt owed him? Think about this story and think about this. How would you apply this story to your life? Thank you.